afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tim Weisenberger. I'm with SAE International Staff. I am on staff in the ground vehicle standards area as a project manager. I help lead our direction in cybersecurity, but also work in lots of different technical areas that I think we all wrestle with, cybersecurity and emerging technologies like electric vehicle and hybrid and other alternative fuels, connected vehicle technology, vehicle automation, and some of those other sort of sticky new disruptive technologies. It's really kind of where we spend a lot of time at SAE on staff, because they're so new and emerging. Generally, standards are written on mature technologies and business approaches, so it's really requires a little bit of extra effort to do our standardization and other work in these areas. So without further ado, we're really here to talk about how SAE is launching a new what we call a cooperative research project under our cooperative research program. These are a little different than SAE's normal standards in that they are pre-competitive research projects. And this project in particular is looking to design and test an inclusive worldwide EV charging industry PKI platform, and with an eye toward being, as secure and trusted as possible, scalable, interoperable, extensible to potentially other use cases, as well as protocol neutral to the EV charging use case itself. And what's unique about these projects is they're really not in our traditional open standards development area. They are pre-competitive research projects that we pull together industry in sort of a joint venture, and those industry members, must meet the criteria for the project itself to perform just very targeted pre-competitive research to just solve an industry problem that has come up. And we have been doing this for quite a while, a couple of decades at SAE. We've done north of 85 of these projects, and each one is a little unique, but we have developed a really good skill set on these agile developments to try and really do that research, do it in an industry-led way, get it done and get it out to industry, and then potentially feed into SAE open standards to develop one of our standards. So it's a little different than what you may be used to in if you've dealt with SAE for standards. So this research opportunity really cropped up through industry efforts. Obviously this transaction, this EV charging transaction, is a really key interface point between automotive, really mobility, and honestly the electric grid and the energy industry, and really critical that it be secure and trusted. ISO 15118 was written a while back, and believed to be sort of provide that complete solution. Although some in industry, had some issue with that and wanted to really just kind of run it to ground and perform a gap analysis. So about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, ChargePoint engaged DigiCert, which is one of the world's largest, I think they are the world's largest certificate authority, root authority, and a company called Ionti that is very, very experienced in developing and fielding PKI platforms for industry, and set out to really do an analysis of the PKI and really cybersecurity elements of 15118. That was published last May, as well as presented to SAE through our in our open trust anchors and authentication task force. I think SAE is a little unique in standards development organizations in that we do have a specific cybersecurity discipline area. We have 2 technical committees and multiple, sub what we call task force that get together to develop J standards for cybersecurity specifically. On the that white paper, it is available. When I share these slides, there is a URL buried here to the technical paper. It found some shortcomings, some gaps in the approach that you can see highlighted here really briefly. Both governance and operations, actually seem to rate out as more underdeveloped and less mature. Technical score was a little bit higher, and this isn't really surprising as someone that knows standards. It's very difficult to write standards around operational things, right? Usually standards are performance-based, and people go out and sort of develop their solutions based on them. But in the case of a PKI, I always like to say it's not just a specification you write, it's really a business that has to go get run. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So just the sort of the blocking and tackling of how we do this. SAE, again, our strength is really in our membership, and our membership comes from industry. All of our standards experts that write our standards are subject matter experts from industry. So in these pre-competitive research projects in this cooperative research program, what we do is bring together not individuals but companies, and we do that in sort of a joint venture where everybody's an equal partner, and SAE just sort of provides the administrative project management and the forum to do these things. So we would like to say that we help develop solutions by industry, for industry. So on the left is that project team, a core team within that research project, and those core team members are usually drawn from broadly from industry. They provide the technical oversight. They stick to the development of the technical research itself, and SAE allows them to do that by taking on all of that administrative thing. So I will be a project manager and work with our internal legal staff, our accounting and finance, our procurement staff, and on, just to make sure that that project team is completely freed up to just focus on the technical development. Then we also like to have a really good, solid liaison with our standards committees, as well as industry stakeholders, to make sure this group, this project, is truly representative broadly of industry. So now a little more specific on this project. Again, what we're trying to develop are really two things: an EV charging PKI platform, but then also what we're calling a handover plan in our statement of work, and that is to identify how or what are the options for fielding an actual operational industry PKI. Because in mature industries, it seems to me, things like banking, financial payments, the internet, other things, the strength of a public key infrastructure is that it's truly sort of run by industry, and it's open to very anybody in the industry on a very sort of regularized basis, for things like pricing and the different requirements. So that is really truly a common good for the industry. So now back to this cooperative research project itself. Our core team members will be made up of three sort of sections of industry: EV developers, EV equipment providers, and then charging network operators. That decision was made not just by SAE, but by early adopting companies to really just hone in on the real constituents that have to get this PKI platform developed. Now, in the future, we will be most likely bringing on other members that we would call affiliate members, and that could be from, again, broadly from industry. I think it's really important to have stakeholders involved in the project, not just with report outs, but down the road involved in the project itself, and we'll get more into that. So in just a one slide overview, this is really, there's a lot more detail to the statement of work, and it will be used as the sort of the statement of work that we would use in a procurement to go out. Remember I said that all of the work is done by paid technical consultants. So we really look at 2 phases. One is to design the EV charging PKI platform itself. So we will do that draft internally to the group. Then we will open it to industry comment through our outreach channels, and then finalize that draft PKI platform design. But then a critical second, and that will probably be 9 to 12 months. That critical second phase is to do platform testing. And that includes just basic functionality testing, proof of scalability, that kind of thing. But because it is a security element, we really want to do platform security testing. Really 2 phases of that. One is more friendly testing that we can control through probably a partner that would just staff the laboratory that we would use, and it would be project members and invited parties. But then once we sort of do our fixes to the vulnerabilities or the issues identified, then we want to open that to a much more open hack fest, if you will, at something like a DEF CON or Black Hat security conference, so that we could set up that pavilion for the EV charging PKI and let the hacker community go at it and see what we come up with once we have all that, finalizing that PKI platform. Now, a couple of other key tasks, what I mentioned about that handover plan, we really need to understand, both early on and then in the final analysis, how are we, or what are the options for fielding that PKI platform? As I said, mature industries usually, have some sort of collaborative that runs the PKI platform for the industry as sort of a common good. Think about when you use the internet. It all kind of happens seamlessly because all those digital certificates and all of that that technology, but as well the operations and the governance are all laid out. Everybody can sort of do what they need to do. And then another piece that is going to be performed by SAE itself is marketing and public relations and outreach side of the project. This is just a quick status. So to date, we are now recruiting members. The initial, I'd call them early adopter team, is listed here on the left-hand side. Everyone from Allego all the way on down to Shell. That group of 10 international companies was brought together, not really in this cooperative research project yet, but just to kind of set the stage for it. So SAE got into very lightweight memorandum of understanding with those companies to develop the technical scope, the schedule and the budget, and the operating procedures for how the group will sort of run itself and operate. The budget and schedule is critical to know. So we really think this needs to be done quickly. So we have an 18 to 24-month schedule. And owing to the fact that, folks like Andreas don't come cheaply, it's a very, very sensitive and sort of a rare skill. So it tends to be quite expensive to go get best in breed companies to do this work for you. So our budget is estimated at $1 to $1.5 million. And just the way our joint ventures, for these projects work, it's just an even, all companies involved evenly take on, their portion at least of the budget. So if we just do simple math at 1.45 million US, based on 10 members, we would have 150,000 US for the project for each member as a participation fee. So again, going over to the right-hand side, the criteria for membership, you have to be one of those types of companies, but then you also have to enter into a mutual non-disclosure agreement with SAE, agree to pay that full participation fee, and then it's really critical to provide active subject matter experts, not only in the EV charging discipline, but in cybersecurity and, if possible, public key infrastructure itself. Some companies, have that on staff, others may not, but we have actually had companies go out and make acquisitions and hires to make sure they have the right expertise to the table. We hope to begin this project here by the end of this month. But that doesn't mean, I'm sorry, let me back up. That doesn't mean that the group is set. It takes a while to get all these documents and the participation fees. So it's not to say that we will be done with our recruiting and that it wouldn't still be open for appropriate companies to still join after, this month. And this is just sort of a quick slide of the type of industry outreach that not only we are going to do, but I actually have already been doing this about the top 5 or 6 rows there, 4 or 5 rows there. I have already been briefing all of those folks out. And you can see, some of the other targets, ELOD here is why I'm speaking. I think it's really important to have, international liaison throughout the globe, as well as, a lot of these folks we hope will actually actively comment on our draft PKI platform documents. So this is all sort of work in progress, but I think it's really important, again, to make sure, if you see that diagram down there on the left, is to make sure that that core team and the development is really reached out and broadened by making sure that industry is aware of it and able to affect change. And that's really it. I know it's a kind of a quick overview, but there's a lot on this webinar. So I thank the ELOD folk for allowing me to present. And if there are any questions, Martin, if you can maybe field some of those, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We don't have much time, but I can squeeze in some questions. Beginning with the last one. Can everyone or anyone, every company join the project?
Again, it is open to anyone that meets this criteria here. So the key first bullet, I think, is you really have to be an EV developer, an equipment provider, or a charging network operator. But other than that, in fact, we really want to make sure that we have good global participation. So we have, if you can see here, we have companies from the North America, the European, and the Asia Pacific regions. Honestly, I'd like to get more input and companies joining from that Asia Pacific region. E-Mobility Power is a charging provider in Japan, but other than that, we're really trying to get, especially an Asia Pacific OE would be wonderful, but that recruiting is ongoing.
Okay. Are US utilities part of the SAE group?
No, they're not, because if you look at the criteria, they really don't fit. But what I've been doing, if you look here, there's just, in this liaison group, I have been reaching out. DOE is Department of Energy, and they're in the US, and we have a lot of different national laboratories. I've briefed them, I think, 3 different times as this has been developing. I am glad to brief anyone, actually, but in the US, our California Energy Commission is very prominent, I think, globally, that really leads in energy area a lot, and so I've already briefed them. But again, I think the key is we're sitting on the transportation side of that sort of interface point, where the EV and the charger plug and that transaction, it really is not on the grid side. The grid wants to make sure that sort of entry point to the grid is secure. So it's really not on the grid side and the energy side, it's more on the mobility side, and that's why we're keeping it that way.
Okay, a follow-up question. Why do utilities not fit? They are EMSPs and CPOs.
Well, where they would fit, I guess, is, for instance, E-Mobility Power is owned by TEPCO, which is a Japanese grid provider. So if a grid provider has, an actual EV charging subsidiary or arm, absolutely. And we really encourage that. I think it's really interesting. If you look at this group, you have, OEs. So there's some thought that some OEs think that they would maybe potentially have charging stations. You have Royal Dutch Shell there on that list. Well, they have just sort of bought into and acquired what they call now Shell New Motion. Well, so that's the petrochemical industry. And then you have e-mobility power coming from the grid side. And then finally, you just have, you know, the charge points, ABBs, Allegos that are just in the charging space itself. So it's a really interesting area, I think, where there's a lot of different segments of industry looking at that as being the provider. But again, if the grid owner has an actual company developing infrastructure, that is a perfect fit.
Okay, final question for you. Is there coordination with SAE G32 committee?
SAE I'm sorry, 32, did you say?
Yes, SAE yeah. And then G32.
Yeah, so just for those who don't know, as I mentioned, SAE is in the aerospace sector as well, and G32 is just the nomenclature for a cybersecurity group in our aerospace area that is focused on cyber physical systems. Yes, this has you know, just lightly been presented to them. What again, if I can move up on the block diagram, so they would be sort of a liaison committee. We as I stated, we have, it's very unique, I think, in SDOs, is that we have a disciplinary in cybersecurity. I didn't mention it, but we also have a cybersecurity discipline in our aerospace side. And I don't work there actively. I have colleagues at SAE staff that do, and we just try and keep that liaison happening. There wouldn't be, you know, a really hard and fast. I mean, it's potential that we could get recruits that want to join the program, but it's just been a liaison at this point, just like it's been a liaison to our SAE ground vehicle standards cybersecurity committees.